Bush versus Gore, 2000, documentary. Night of November 7th, 2000, the United States faced one of the closest and most controversial elections in its history. A few hundred votes in Florida, one state that would decide who became president. What followed was not just a political battle, but a legal war that went all the way to the Supreme Court. This is the story of Bush versus Gore, the case that stopped a recount and effectively chose the next president of the United States. Background: Election night. Vice President Al Gore versus Texas Governor George W. Bush. Nationwide, the vote was razor thin, but all eyes turned to Florida, with its 25 electoral votes that would decide the winner. Initial machine counts showed Bush ahead by fewer than 2,000 votes out of nearly 6 million. By Florida law, that tiny margin automatically triggered a recount. As the recounts continued, the margin shrank even further to just 537 votes. The ballot problems. Florida's voting system quickly came under scrutiny. Many counties used old punch card machines. Voters would punch holes in a card, but sometimes the paper chad did not detach fully. The result? Hanging chads, dimpled chads, and pregnant chads, ballots where voter intent was unclear. In Palm Beach County, the butterfly ballot caused chaos. Its confusing design led many voters to accidentally select the wrong candidate. Lawsuits and challenges piled up, as both sides argued over which votes should count and which should not. Legal battle timeline. November 9th to 26th, 2000. Gore's team requested manual recounts in several Democratic counties. Local canvassing boards tried to interpret voter intent from punch card ballots. Florida Supreme Court ruled that manual recounts could continue, extending deadlines. Bush's legal team argued this violated federal law and that different counties were applying different standards. December 8th, Florida's Supreme Court ordered a statewide manual recount of undervotes, ballots where machines recorded no choice for president. December 9th, Bush appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. The court ordered a temporary halt to the recount while it considered the case. The nation held its breath. The presidency was hanging on just hundreds of ballots. Supreme Court decision. On December 12, 2000, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its ruling in Bush versus Gore. Key points. 1. Equal Protection Clause. The court ruled that different counties were using different methods to count votes. This violated the constitutional principle of equal protection. Voters in one county had their ballots judged differently than voters in another. 2. No time left. The court also held that there wasn't enough time to create a uniform standard and complete a fair recount before the federal deadline for certifying electors. The court's per curiam opinion stopped the recount immediately. The result: George W. Bush won Florida's 25 electoral votes, giving him 271 in the Electoral College, just one more than the 270 needed to become president. The numbers. The final certified margin in Florida: Bush by 537 votes out of nearly 6 million cast. Never before had the presidency turned on such a tiny margin or been decided so directly by the Supreme Court. Dissent and criticism. Not all justices agreed, for justices dissented strongly. Justice John Paul Stevens wrote that the court's decision undermined the nation's confidence in judges as impartial guardians of the law. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dissent ended with the rare words, "I dissent," dropping the customary word respectfully. Critics argued that the court's conservative majority had acted politically, effectively deciding the election rather than letting the votes be counted. Supporters countered that the court prevented chaos and brought closure to a bitter dispute. Aftermath and legacy. Bush versus Gore left a permanent mark on American democracy. It exposed flaws in outdated voting machines. It sparked nationwide reforms, including modern electronic systems. It raised deep questions about the Supreme Court's role in elections. Although the court said its ruling was limited to this case only, The political and historical impact was enormous. To this day, Bush versus Gore is remembered as the case where the Supreme Court, not the voters alone, decided who would be president. A presidency turned on 537 votes, a recount stopped by the highest court, and a nation left debating, was this justice or politics in disguise? This was Bush versus Gore, 2000.